The recent statement by President Donald Trump has introduced a new dynamic into the complex geopolitical landscape surrounding the war in Ukraine. In his post, Trump declared that he is ready to impose major new sanctions on Russia, but only under the condition that all NATO nations first cease their purchases of Russian oil. He criticized the shocking behavior of some NATO members who continue to buy Russian energy, arguing that this practice significantly weakens the alliance's collective bargaining power and prolongs the conflict. This ultimatum effectively places the onus of further action on Europe, particularly on countries like Turkey, Hungary, and Slovakia, which have maintained significant energy ties with Moscow. Analysis: a shift in sanctions policy. Trump's position represents a departure from the traditional U.S. approach of multilateral sanctions by making future American action contingent on a unified NATO front. Historically, the U.S. has often led with its own sanctions, seeking to bring allies on board afterward. This new stance reframes the issue not as a unilateral U.S. responsibility, but as a test of NATO solidarity and commitment. By calling out specific allies, Trump is applying direct public pressure, a tactic that bypasses traditional diplomatic channels and leverages his platform to force a public debate within the alliance. This approach is rooted in a burden-sharing philosophy that has long been a hallmark of his foreign policy. He is essentially saying that the U.S. will not bear the full economic cost of sanctions, while its allies continue to fund Russia's war machine. Critics, however, view this as a potential delay tactic, arguing that it creates a near-impossible condition for sanctions to be implemented. A full and immediate halt to Russian oil imports by all NATO members is a high bar, especially for countries with limited energy alternatives, and could be seen as an excuse to avoid taking a more direct and forceful stance against Russia. Reasons and consequences. The primary reason behind Trump's statement is to pressure NATO allies to increase their financial commitment to the war effort by cutting off a key revenue stream for Russia's military. He argues that the continued flow of oil money from some members is a fundamental contradiction to the alliance's stated goal of helping Ukraine win the war. The consequence of this demand, if met, would be a significant blow to the Russian economy, forcing the Kremlin to seek new, less lucrative markets. This would likely have a profound impact on Russia's ability to sustain its military operations and could serve as a powerful bargaining chip in future peace negotiations. However, the consequences of this policy are not without risk. A full and sudden cutoff of Russian oil could trigger a major energy crisis in parts of Europe, leading to soaring fuel prices, economic disruption, and potential public backlash. Countries like Hungary and Slovakia, which are highly dependent on Russian energy, would face severe economic hardship. This could create deep divisions within NATO, potentially fracturing the alliance at a critical moment. It also raises questions about whether the U.S. and its allies have sufficient alternative energy sources to replace Russia's supply without causing significant domestic economic pain. The move could also inadvertently strengthen Russia's ties with other major oil consumers like China and India, making Moscow less reliant on Western markets in the long run. Prediction and solutions. The likelihood of all NATO countries immediately ceasing Russian oil imports is low. Turkey, Hungary, and Slovakia are likely to resist due to their unique economic and political circumstances. The most probable outcome is a period of intense diplomatic negotiation and internal debate within the alliance. The U.S. may increase pressure through bilateral discussions and targeted tariffs on goods from countries that continue to engage in the trade, but a swift and unanimous cutoff is improbable. This conditional stance may be perceived by Russia as a sign of disunity within NATO, emboldening Moscow to continue its military campaign. A potential solution would involve a phased, coordinated approach. Instead of an immediate halt, NATO could agree on a timeline for gradually reducing and eventually eliminating Russian oil imports. This would give dependent countries time to secure alternative suppliers and build the necessary infrastructure. Additionally, a unified front could be presented through a revised global oil price cap, designed to further limit Russia's revenue while minimizing economic shock to importing nations. This would require robust enforcement mechanisms to counter Russia's use of shadow fleets and circumventing sanctions. Ultimately, achieving a consensus on this issue will require a delicate balance of political will, economic strategy, and a shared understanding that the short-term costs of a unified front are outweighed by the long-term benefits of ending the conflict and upholding international security.